Here are some of the favorite issues of the Philippines and our positions on each of them, general. Because I cannot say everything in this forum, we don't have enough time. Number one, the issue of migrant workers. The Philippines, together with Indonesia, were the champions last year of the issue of pushing ASEAN to finalize the ASEAN consensus on migrant workers, which was 10 years in the making. We negotiated and negotiated, and when we were planning the Philippine chairmanship, we said, now or never. No one else takes up the issue of migrant workers better than the Philippines. Indonesia is a new entrant because they have only started a few years ago to send migrant workers outside of their country. If you remember, the first agreement on migrant workers also happened in Cebu, the Philippines, 10 years ago. While Indonesia took a hardline position to force the issuance of a legal instrument. You know, up to the last few months of the issuance of this instrument, there was tight negotiations. There was a series of negotiations between the Philippines and Indonesia. Ironically, the two champions. Why? Because Indonesia was insisting on a legal instrument. The Philippines said, no, we can't, it's impossible. There is very strong opposition. This is how different ASEAN member states are, especially on the issue of migrant workers. Thailand is mixed. You receive and you send. So you have more or less a neutral position on this. But the Philippines and Indonesia. So okay, Indonesia said, legal instrument. It's impossible. Cannot happen. The year will pass, and after the Philippines, who will chair Singapore? Who will chair the ASEAN? Singapore. You cannot expect Singapore to champion this instrument in their chairmanship. As I said, Singapore has other interests, air services, free trade, etc. So anyway, the Philippines and Indonesia came to a compromise. And we came up with a stronger document with a corresponding plan of action. So whatever you could not get in the main body, you can get in the plan of action. So this is how, you know, diplomats work out their differences. Okay, so that's migrant workers. It still has many aspects, but just to tell you that we said, before 2017, we said, one of the most important achievements of the Philippine chairmanship is the issuance of this document. And indeed, we were able to accomplish that. Now, we're all waiting for this. South China Sea, maritime security. Yeah, this is a very important issue, but ASEAN does not talk only of this issue. But let me tell you where we are now. The Philippines has been severely criticized for its current position on the South China Sea. However, this should be taken in context, and timing is essential in understanding the Philippine position. The main interest of the Philippines, and indeed, even of Thailand and the rest of ASEAN right now, is to maintain peace and stability in the region, manage the escalating tensions, reduce the conditions that might lead to miscalculations and accidents which could lead to heightened conflict in the area. First, priority of the Philippines and ASEAN right now. The immediate objective is to finalize the Code of Conduct on the South China Sea, COC, the framework of which has been agreed on and announced during the Philippine chairmanship. In March, we are going to start earnest negotiations on the COC. The COC is more than 10 years in the making, and again, we, the Philippines, consider the issuance of the framework agreement on the COC and the announcement of formal negotiations to take place as one of the major achievements of our chairmanship. It has never happened before. It is happening, and we would like to come up with a COC, quality COC in due time. My personal analogy of the Philippine position is this. It is like winning a lottery and putting your big winnings in the bank. Right now, you don't need all the money and are not withdrawing all of it. And when a big opportunity arises in the future, then it would be time to withdraw the funds. Meanwhile, we needed to win the arbitration case to boost our credit standing. This is my personal opinion. So we needed to win in the arbitration case. Nobody was giving any importance to what the Philippines was saying. I tell you, I was the Philippine SOM leader to the ASEM meeting in 2012, and I was putting the South China Sea issue in the agenda. Nobody sided with me. They were saying, this is your bilateral issue with China, don't put it in a multilateral forum. Nobody was listening. And then we won the arbitration case. Our credit standing became bigger. And people are listening. So, we must seize the opportunities presented by this elevated credit standing in the region and in the world. Okay, next favorite topic of the Philippines with pronounced Philippine positions is women's rights and empowerment, especially with me there as the Philippine representative to ASEAN. The Philippines is a strong champion in ASEAN of protecting the rights and promoting the welfare of women. In negotiating any work plan or declaration, we, the Philippines, I in particular, see to it that it is always there. Political participation of women, economic empowerment of women, and of course, the role of women in socio-cultural matters. The Philippines spearheaded last year the issuance of 2 women-centered documents, leader statements. It's called the ASEAN Leaders Joint Statement on Promoting Women, Peace and Security, WPS. The other WPS that's close to my heart. You know the other one. And the ASEAN Convention Against Trafficking in Persons, especially women and children. You know, very interestingly, I didn't do it on purpose. I deposited the instrument of ratification of the Philippines to this Convention on Trafficking of Women and Children. I was the 6th country to do so. Under ASEAN regulations, if you have 6, the agreement comes into force. I deposited the instrument of ratification of Philippines on March 8, 2017, and it entered into force 1 month after that, and I deposited it on March 8, International Women's Year, a day. So, I don't know whether that's coincidental or not, but I'm happy to say that our deposit meant the convention entered into force. Also, as the Philippine chair of the ASEAN Institute for Peace and Reconciliation, I've organized under the IPAR a few symposiums on the role of women in peace processes and reconciliation in Cebu. The plight of women in conflict situations, among many other initiatives. I intend to push for the training of women as negotiators, mediators, facilitators, and peace activists in peace processes and reconciliation. The other favorite topic of the Philippines, of course, is counterterrorism. The Philippines is at the forefront of taking strong positions for intensified cooperation on countering terrorism, especially after the Marawi incident. Next favorite topic is climate change and environment biodiversity. The Philippines, being the victim of many man-made and natural disasters resulting from climate change, pushes hard in multilateral forums. And if you have time, Professor, is a little bit far from here. The Philippines is home to the Asean Center for Biodiversity in Los Baños, UP. Los Baños. You have to visit that. You will see how ASEAN cooperates in the area of biodiversity. So I always, my mouth, every time I am in any forum, I promote the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity. Next favorite topic of the Philippines is peace and reconciliation, naturally. The Philippines adopts a strong position in the promotion of peace processes and reconciliation. Human rights, contrary to popular belief, the Philippines champions human rights in ASEAN, but following the principles of non-interference in the internal affairs of states. The other favorite topic of the Philippines is connectivity. As a maritime nation, the Philippines has a big stake in promoting connectivity in ASEAN. Last year, we expended huge amounts of time and effort to promote the master plan on ASEAN connectivity, MPAC 2025. And now let's go to how these national positions, I gave you some glimpses of the national positions of certain countries, how these national positions are melded or forged to become regional positions. I don't have time now. I have 101 stories about these positions, but I'll give you 2 examples only, and that will, and I'll end there. An interesting example of differing national positions among member states and vis-a-vis external partners is the DPRK. Yeah, the issue of the Korean Peninsula issue. When we were negotiating the EAS Leaders' Declaration on Chemical Weapons, of course pertaining to DPRK, we almost came to a deadlock. And there was a danger that the document would not be passed. Although there is a common desire by all members to maintain regional peace and stability by upholding the CWC Chemical Weapons Convention prohibitions on the use, development, production, acquisition, stockpiling, retention, and transfer of chemical weapons, and to call out violators of chemical and nuclear weapons conventions, particularly the DPRK, here is the bone of contention. So, the meeting was divided into 2 groups. You can see here, Russia, China, Laos, and Cambodia opposed the mention of DPRK by name for various national reasons. Laos, Cambodia, they are close friends, BFF of the DPRK. You know the BFF? In the Philippines? Oh, okay, so I speak the millennial language. Anyway, so we understand. So there was one faction that didn't want to mention DPRK by name. Guess what Thailand's position was? In the middle. Always. Okay, on the other hand, well, Republic of Korea, in the beginning they said, oh, mention. But later on, they said, we are flexible. If you mention, okay. If you don't mention. Because right there, in the locale of the missiles, no? Okay, the next slide, please. Not yet. I want to show the other position. Of course, the US, other member states of ASEAN, supported by the US, Japan, Australia, would want to use the harshest language to condemn the DPRK and to mention it by name. So one side, soften your language. Don't mention Korea by name. Another side said, oh, let's use the harshest terms to condemn the DPRK. And let's mention the DPRK by name, call a spade, etc. Here was my solution to merge both positions in the following paragraph. Can we go to the next slide? This was the merged position that everybody accepted. Why? it doesn't mention DPRK by name because it was a standstill, deadlock. China said we will never accept any paragraph that mentions DPRK. So we came to a deadlock. Russia had the same position. Of course, Laos and Cambodia were not very vocal. Why did I propose this solution? Okay, it doesn't mention DPRK by name, but these two UNSCR resolutions, they mention the DPRK by name and condemn the DPRK in the harshest possible language. See how national positions can be merged into a regional position, and we have therefore an EAS leader statement on chemical weapons. If we didn't come to a regional position, we wouldn't have been able to issue that leader's statement. I'll give you another example and I'll end. On the issue of IUUF, the favorite topic of Indonesia nowadays, irregular, unreported, unregulated fishing. Among ASEAN, this is among ASEAN. Just now I gave you among ASEAN and its EAS partners. Among ASEAN, Indonesia wants to place the IUUF in the political section of documents. Vietnam opposes it to indicate its opposition to the Minister of Fisheries of Indonesia's practice of burning fishing boats. What is the compromise? We include still IUUF because Vietnam said, no, don't mention IUUF anymore. We cannot come to an agreement. Well, the Philippines is also, we also have had some fishing boats burned by the Minister of Fisheries of Indonesia. But it is an important issue and we have to mention it. So we mention IUUF, but in the economic section of our documents. Why? Because if you elevate it to the political section, the implications are more serious. It might lead to, greater tensions among the ASEAN member states. So I can give you many examples, but we don't have time now. But just to show you, national positions in ASEAN are so difficult to achieve, and ASEAN vis-a-vis other partners, but it can be done with the common intention, with a common desire to use diplomacy and not use war and other such instruments in the settling of our dispute. So in conclusion, let me just go to the last slide. National positions are driven, of course, by national interests. But what those national interests are, you should be sensitive to each member state's sensitivities. Multilateral forums seek to harmonize or merge national positions for the common good. And indeed, there are platforms for enunciating national positions and resolving disputes in a peaceful way. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share with you my experience as a direct practitioner of international relations, particularly intra-ASEAN relations and ASEAN, vis-a-vis her external partners. Thank you. Salamat po. Kapun ka.